Today, I'm going to show you how you can buy your first rental property with little to no money. In fact, most of the rental properties I buy today do not require my own money. So we're going to go over how you can do that. And it's going to be done in a simple 5-step framework. So the first thing we're going to be going over is how to pick a market, because this is always the question I get from people starting out. Like, dude, what market should I pick? You know, do I go for cash flow appreciation? We'll cover all of that. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to find deals. Where exactly are all the deals? They're going to be much different than you probably think. You don't have to actually find your own deals. I'm going to go over how other people can find the deals for you. The third topic we'll go over is financing. So how do we go and buy these properties with no money? What are the options? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do financing these days. The fourth thing we're going to go over are rental strategies. So what exactly are we going to do with the property? Should we do long-term rents, mid-term, short-term, Airbnb? We're going to go over all of the strategies. And then lastly, we'll jump into taxes. How does buying rental properties save you on taxes so you can potentially make a boatload of money and pay zero in taxes? I am the recipient of this. I've been able to significantly cut my tax bill because of buying rental properties with the framework I'm going to show you. And look, it doesn't matter if you're trying to get that first deal or you're somebody who's trying to scale. This is going to help you out. All right, so first thing, let's talk about the market. How do you choose which market you should go into? Well, right now I see so many people who are like, Ryan, I'm in California, or I'm in Las Vegas, or I'm in New York, or somewhere really expensive. And they're like, you can't afford anything. You can't buy a rental here. And quite frankly, that's just not true. All right. You could buy a rental property anywhere. You just got to make sure the numbers add up. Your rental strategy makes sense. The financing makes sense. You could buy anywhere. It just depends on the deal. And so let's talk about when you are first picking a market, what are some things to consider? Well, the first thing to consider is whether or not you're going to go for cash flow or appreciation. All right. Now, typically cash flow and appreciation cannot coexist in the same market, at least when it comes to just normal rentals, right? If you are going to be in a cash flow market, most likely you're going to be somewhere in the Midwest with cheaper homes. You know, there are properties out in Ohio. There are properties out in Indiana, where you can go get properties for literally like $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. Now, if you're like me in Vegas, you're like, that's crazy. Sign me up. How do I get a property for that cheap? Well, here's the thing. Not every $50,000 property is a good deal. I have bought properties for $12,000, $5,000, $20,000. I've bought these cheap properties in random places, and none of them ended up making me money. In fact, like on paper, they look great. I'm like, oh, I'm paying $12,000. This thing's going to rent for $800 a month. You can't lose. Well, guess what? You can lose because one repair ends up wiping you out for the entire cash flow, and sometimes even for more than the cost of the entire property. So if you are going to a cash flow market, let me first off say, don't buy the cheap $10,000 homes. That's just my opinion. They're never going to be worth anything. They don't cash flow the way you think they are. So just not a fan of that. But I am a fan of buying in the Midwest. And, you want to go buy a $100,000 to a $200,000 home. That can make a lot of sense. So cash flow markets are going to be usually over there. Then you have appreciation markets, right? And so if you were to look at, California and Nevada and Texas the last few years, or even the last few decades, you could just see like, man, homes in Southern California used to be $50,000. Now those same homes are worth $2 million. Like, that's crazy. That didn't happen in the Midwest, right? Those Midwest homes that were $50,000 are $100,000 today. They're $200,000, but they are definitely not going from $50,000 to $2 million. And the same thing is true in Nevada. I got started in real estate in 2010 as a realtor, and the median home price in Las Vegas was $100,000. The median home price today is almost $450,000. So, we are in an appreciation market over here. The problem is you usually don't get cash flow in an appreciation market. And I'll just give you some examples, right? In a cash flow market, we might see a property for $150,000. And what we used to want to go for is called the 1% rule, okay? The 1% rule basically states that you will make in monthly income 1% of the price of the property. So in this case, 1% would be $1,500 a month. So if this could rent for $1,500 a month, you would be good. Like, you'd be making money. And it's funny, when I first got started in real estate, people wanted the 2% rule. Like, they're like, if you're going to pay $150K for a property, it should rent for $3,000. Now, clearly, if there was markets like that, everybody would be jumping all over every single property that fit that 2% rule, but that doesn't really exist today. In fact, in most markets, especially appreciation markets, you're not anywhere close to that. For example, in Las Vegas, a $450,000 home, at the end of the day, it might rent for, say, $2,500 to $3,000. So we are definitely not at the 1% rule. We're more like at the 0.6% rule in many cases in Las Vegas. So, you start to ask yourself at like 0.6%, can you even cash flow? And in a lot of cases, the answer is no, right? If you were to pay market value for a home today and just go get normal financing on it, not put a lot of money down, you're probably going to lose money on the rents right now at this very moment with where prices are and with where interest rates are. Now, that does not mean you're not going to make money in the long run. In fact, you will, because rental rates are going to rise at some point, right? These houses that are renting for $2,500 to $3,000 today, at some point, they are going to rent for $3,500, $4,000, and then they are going to start to cash flow. And by then, they're going to have appreciated even more. You're going to have a principal pay down and all these other cool things with rental properties. But not to make things confusing, I just want to make this very clear. When you're choosing a market, you really have to decide from the get-go what market you want to pick. And, do you want to try and base it off pure cash flow? And if that's the case, you can get some consistent income, or you going for appreciation, which is going to lead to a big payday down the road. Personally, when it comes to, say, single-family homes, I've always leaned for appreciation markets. So I bought majority of my properties here in Las Vegas and in California. That's where I've bought my single families. On the cash flow side of things, with our fund, we have a fund called Pineda Capital. We have bought over 500 units in Iowa and Georgia. And so those are cash flow markets. We're purely going for cash flow. The multifamily game works a little different than the single family game. Not here to talk about that. But long story short, we are targeting these Midwest and more cash flow markets. I know Georgia's not in the Midwest, but some parts of Georgia and some parts of really all different places can be cash flow markets. All right. So, even in California, if you were to go to, these random towns in California, you could find some that actually cash flow and don't appreciate as well. So I'm just giving generalities here between cash flow and appreciation. So, the best of both worlds would be to get a market that does have appreciation, but you can somehow also get cash flow. And this is why things like Airbnb and midterm rentals are great, because with Airbnb and midterm rentals, right, we can now take this $450,000 property that's, only going to get $2,500 to $3,000. You're not going to make money. And you might be able to go pull $4,000 to $5,000 through a midterm rental or Airbnb. And in that case, you might make a little bit of cash flow along the way, but now the numbers start to pencil out. So we'll talk about that later with rental strategies. But long story short, think about cash flow versus appreciation when choosing your market. What is the most important to you? Honestly, if it was me, I think kind of investing in your backyard is always a good idea. I will always buy properties here in Las Vegas. I'm born and raised here. I know it better than every other market I'm in. I have more eyes on it. I'm able to go visit the properties. I know what areas in town I really like. And so, I'm a fan of your backyard, but look, if you don't want to invest in your backyard, you don't really like it, pick a market that you really want to go all in on and just really crush that market. Don't buy in all these different things. For me, I ended up buying properties all over when I was first starting these cash flow markets. I bought in Indiana, Pennsylvania, Michigan. And the problem is when you're in lots of different markets, you have to go get management and set up everything else in all those different markets. So it's just like 5 times the work. Whereas if I just focused on one area like Vegas, or back when I was buying all these Airbnbs, they were in Big Bear, California. All I had to do was build it one time in that market, and then I just keep adding properties to the portfolio. So don't buy in lots of different markets. Just pick one, stick with it, and go dominate it. So now that you've picked a market, the next thing to think about is how are we going to find deals? Okay? Well, there's lots of ways to find deals, but I think that there's a question you first got to answer, and that is, are you going to be doing this yourself, or are you going to partner with somebody? And I'll tell you, I have done both. Okay, if you're going to do it yourself, that means you got to go out there and find the deals, which I'll show you how to do that here in a second, but you're going to be the one putting in the work, making it happen. If you partner with somebody, then you don't have to find the deals. You just got to find the right partner that you trust. So for example, I would say go partner with somebody if you already have money. If you have money and you're making good money in your business and you're making good money, your W-2 or whatever, and you're an accredited investor, right? An accredited investor is somebody who is making over $250,000 2 years straight, or they have a net worth over $1 million, right? So let's just say you're an accredited investor. I think you're a prime candidate to partner with people because clearly you know how to make money. And doing real estate and doing it at a high level requires work. And so if you're going to go put in more work over here, it's probably going to take away from whatever your current business is doing that's making you money. So I'm a believer in partnering if you're already an accredited investor making money, because then you're able to go invest in funds like mine with Pineda Capital or anyone else's. You can go invest in anyone else's fund. But the cool thing is when you invest in a fund, all you got to do is just give your money and then they do the rest. They've already found a good deal. They manage the deal. They do everything. You just sit back and just wait for the deal to cash flow and eventually sell and make money. All right. Other thing I'll mention about partnerships and, investing money into a fund is just realize that a fund is a long-term game. Okay. You're not going to make money right away. In fact, most funds right now that are buying properties are not making much cash flow. It's a very difficult time right now with interest rates and prices to get cash flow anywhere. So most funds, they're just not really making anything in cash flow. They're going to make their money in the next 5 to 10 years when they exit the property. And when they exit the property, meaning they sell the property, that's when the big, cash event is going to happen. You'll get your investment back, plus all the interest and everything else, all the profit that has occurred over that time period. And that's how most funds are operating today. All right. So partnership is great for somebody who has money. Now, if you're watching this, most of you guys probably don't have money. So if that's money, you probably don't have it, right? That's why you clicked on the video. That's totally fine. If you don't have money, then you are going to have to pay with time. So you got to figure out how to go out there and find deals yourself, which is totally fine. That's how I got started. I still go get all my own deals to this day. So how do you go about getting deals yourself? Well, one way to do it is the MLS. All right. I love buying deals off the MLS. If you don't know what that is the multiple listing service. Now, this is just basically at this point, Zillow, right? You would see all the properties that are listed on the market. If you have MLS access, it definitely helps. But at the end of the day, there are lots of tools you can use right now that basically give you access to all the properties out there, and it's very simple to use. And so like one of our tools we have for our students is called Wealthy Deals. You can go to wealthydeals.com and get it. And it's a software. It's $97 a month. You can go see any property across the country. You can go pull the tax records. You can see the ownership. You can see what kind of loan it has. You can go see if they're in distress, if they're in foreclosure. You could pull the seller's data and contact them. You can get their phone number, their email. It's a really cool tool. So you go to wealthydeals.com and grab that. But basically, we buy nationwide now. I don't have the MLS all across the nation. I just use Wealthy Deals to do it because it allows us to go do these deals all across everywhere. I mean, we've locked up deals in the last week in Missouri, in San Antonio, Houston, Vegas, SoCal, Menifee was one we just got. That was a $45,000 assignment. So, long story short, you don't really need the MLS, but you can get properties on the market and use other tools to see what they're worth and contact sellers and everything else. So that's one way, okay? The second way to do it is through wholesalers. So wholesalers, for those who don't know, are simply people who find deals for a living. So we do a ton of wholesaling in my company right now. And basically the way wholesaling works is, you have a seller who has a property, and then you have, the buyer, which let's just say the buyer is me right now. And I go to the seller and I'm like, hey, I'd give you $200K for your property. And they're like, sweet, $200K works. Then I see, there's a flipper or somebody who wants to be a landlord, AKA own it as a rental property. And they're like, Ryan, dude, I'd give you $220,000 for this property. And I'm like, okay, bet. $220,000, okay? I'm just gonna sell you the contract to the deal. I don't have to buy it. I can just simply sell the contract. And then you are going to pay me $20,000. And now that you have the rights to the contract, you're now in contract with the seller and you're going to pay him the $200K. So now this flipper, landlord, and buyer pays $200K to the seller. They pay $20K to me, and they end up getting the home as a result. So I make $20K without having to buy it, fix it up, do any of that. I just got paid because I found a great deal. Selling is a great way to make whether side income or become your primary source of income. But if you're looking to buy a rental property, you can definitely buy it from a wholesaler because these guys are making money. Because even at the end of the day, let's say you're this person, right? And you're buying this deal for $220,000, but you know it's worth $330,000. Like you're ecstatic. You know, you got a property with over 100K of equity. That's amazing. And who cares that the buyer's making 20K? I pay a buyer 20K, or a wholesaler in this case, because once you assign it, you become the wholesaler, right? I would pay a wholesaler 20K all day, every day, if it was a good deal. So, you know, I've actually, my personal residence right now, right? I bought it for $1.8 million. And the wholesaler had it under contract for $1.6. So I ended up paying this guy a $200,000 assignment fee. And I was happy to do it. You know why? Because this $1.8 million home, I ended up putting $1.2 million into it to do renovations, fix it up, everything. So, you know, I'm all in for $3 million bucks. And then we got it appraised at $4 million. So this one deal, buying it from a wholesaler, got me over $1 million of equity. Like one deal would have made me a millionaire technically on paper. And he made 200 grand. I'm happy for him. That's great. And then like the side benefit was I live in it now and it's an amazing home. So I'm totally cool with that. I love wholesalers. I've paid out millions of dollars of assignment fees over the years. And so I'm happy to do it. So if you're trying to buy your first rental property, let me tell you, networking with other wholesalers is a great idea. All right. The next one you can do is seller marketing, right? Direct to seller. I'll just put seller right there, right? Direct to seller marketing. This means you are going to spend money to get in front of sellers. So what are some ways that you can, spend money? Well, you could do pay-per-click, which is Google. You can run Facebook ads. That's something we do heavily right now. You could do cold calling, text messaging. You could do TV commercials. I've done that for years. I've spent millions on TV commercials. You could do door knocking. You could do bandit signs, hangers. The list goes on and on. You can direct mail. You can go directly to the seller. And the cool thing when you go directly to the seller, there's no middleman. You don't have a wholesaler. You don't have an agent. You can get, in my opinion, the best deals going direct to seller, right? Because you get to cut out all the middlemen and negotiate yourself. So a big fan of direct to seller marketing. But once again, if you're going to do this, it's going to depend on your budget. You know, how much money do you have to do direct to seller? And then your time. How much time do you have to go dedicate to this? Because I'll tell you, if you're working a full-time job right now and you don't want to spend time calling sellers and trying to negotiate, you're better off just networking with wholesalers, partnering with agents who can get deals off the MLS, and just let them bring you deals and do it, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Direct to seller marketing, though, will get better deals, and it is something you can scale even bigger. So you got to decide those things. And like, to give an example, right? We were talking about wealthy deals earlier and the software. Like we use it for direct to seller marketing a lot because what happens is, first off, we'll go pull a list of sellers on wealthy deals. All right. So we'll pull a list of sellers on wealthy deals, maybe in pre-foreclosure, right? Well, then get the phone numbers of those sellers and cold call them right then and there. And so we're cold calling all these sellers in pre-foreclosure. We're text messaging them too. And we're able to go try and get a deal with them. And that's just like the most basic way to start. It's the cheapest way to start. Cold calling and texting, it takes a lot of labor and time, but it can make you a boatload of money. So for me, that's how we kind of recommend all of our students who are just getting started to do it. And for, everyone else, if you got a bigger budget, you've been around, you can totally do the other ways like pay-per-click, Facebook ads, direct mail, all these other things that would produce higher cost leads, but higher quality leads. So anyways, these are some ways you can go about getting a deal. If you're going to do it yourself, you got to do one of these. You got to pay with time. If you already got money and you don't want to pay with time, just partner up with somebody else and lend them the money. All right, now let's talk about the next point, which is financing. How do you buy these deals that people are sending you or that you're getting yourself? Well, first one, just as the most obvious, is cash. You got cash, clearly, you could just buy it all cash. Now, here's the thing. I very rarely ever just buy properties all cash. Even though in our marketing, we're like, we'll make you a cash offer. It's true, we will, but it's never my cash. You know, I'm always using my own private money lenders. I'm always using, other buyers. If I'm wholesaling the deal, they're bringing the cash to the table. So cash is something that you can use yourself, but we just don't personally do it a lot. All right. The second way is through what we call private money. So I just mentioned this, but private money is pretty much made my business what it is today. This is when you raise money from other people to buy your real estate deal. So to give you an example of this, if you have a friend or a family member who's got $100,000, well, they can be a private money lender for you, and you could work out a deal with them in multiple ways. You could say, hey, I'm gonna pay you a flat interest rate for letting me borrow your money. Maybe I'm gonna pay you 8%, 10%, 12%, right? And so you can raise private money that way. Another way to raise private money is through just an equity split. And so you might go to them and say, hey, if you put up the money, let's own the property 50-50 together. And, when we sell the property, you'll get your money back. And then, we still own it. We get the profits 50-50. This is literally how we run our fund at Pineda Capital, right? Many cases, what we'll do is we might go buy a $5 million building, a $10 million building, right? And we need to go raise, say, $3 million. And to raise that $3 million, we'll go out and find a bunch of private money, just normal everyday people, and say, hey, we're trying to raise $3 million. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to pay you an interest rate return, and then we're also going to give you equity in the deal. And so that way they're, going to get a interest rate of whatever we, do for that deal. Let's say it's 8%. And then they're also going to get, in most cases, an 80-20 split, 80% going to them in the profit. So 20% would go to us. So that's how it would typically work in most funds. Now that's not how we do it for flips per se. When we raise money for our house flips, we just give a flat interest rate. On a house flip, I'll basically say, hey, we're going to give you 10 to 12% interest on the house flip. So that's typically what I do. However long the money's out, that's when you get your money back. And the reason this works on a house flip is because it's really easy because the house flip doesn't take as long as an apartment building, right? I'm like, yeah, we're going to flip the house. It's going to take 4 to 6 months. When it's all said and done, you'll just get the interest that is accrued along the way. With an apartment, like I said, a fund is typically going to be a 5-10 year play. So, they're locking their money up for a much longer period of time. And therefore, when somebody is willing to do that, you got to pay them a higher return for them to want to invest at that level. So, those are just some different ways to think about private money. But one of my favorite ways that we invest is blending private money with hard money. So hard money is basically like a private money lender, but they're a professional lender. They have raised billions of dollars, and their goal is to just deploy it into good deals. Now, they're going to be very similar to what I just said. Most hard money lenders are going to charge you anywhere from like 9 to 12%. They're going to also have fees on top of it. And fees could be like a doc fee of $1,200. Then they're going to charge what people call points. Points are basically just 1%. So if they say, hey, I'm going to charge you 2 points, what they're saying is, if you borrow $200,000 from me, I'm going to charge you 2% of $200,000. So basically, that would come out to $4,000 in points. So that's what hard money lenders do. So the way I like to do it, and this is how I buy rental properties, is I like to combine private money and hard money. And then we do this, and I call it kind of like hybrid financing. So hard money might come to me and say, Ryan, we will give you 90% financing on the deal. And I'm like, great, I still need 10%. So what I'll do is I'll go to the private money and I'll say, hey, I need 10%, but I won't just get 10%. I'll get 10% plus all my other costs. So I already know, like, if I'm going to flip this house, I need 6 months of interest payments. I need closing costs. I need taxes and insurance and utilities and all those things. So I'm going to go raise, from private money, 10% plus whatever all my costs are. And when I do that, now I've essentially got everything covered. I got 90% plus 10% plus all my costs. I'm going to get into this property for no money out of pocket. This is literally how I buy pretty much all my real estate, whether it's a house flip or whether it is a rental property. So, definitely use this model. And the cool thing is when you use this model, you're then able to do what is very famous called a BRRRR. And my friend Brandon Turner, coined this phrase from Bigger Pockets. By the way, Brandon is speaking at our next WealthCon. If you don't know, WealthCon is an event we hold every single quarter. Over 1,000 real estate investors and entrepreneurs here in Las Vegas. This next one is going to be July 19th to the 21st. Brandon Turner's coming to speak along with some of the best real estate investors in the world. You don't want to miss it. You can just go to wealthcon.org to get your ticket today. It's a great place for networking. And by the way, it's a great place to find private money and to find what we were talking about earlier, deals. At WealthCon, people find private money and deals all the time. We had a guy in our coaching program who literally every week we do wins. And he was like, dude, I just want to shout out last WealthCon, I raised all the private money to do a $9 million deal. And I was like, dang, that's crazy, dude. Like, they should have gave me the money. I'm the host, right? No, but I'm happy for him because he was able to raise money for his deal by just attending this event. And I've seen people get deals from the event. I have gotten deals from hosting the event. So highly recommend you guys come to WealthCon if you're a real estate investor. But back to the BRRRR method, all right? What is the BRRRR method? Well, it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refi, and repeat. So let's talk about this. First step, buy. You got to buy a good deal like we talked about before. What is a good deal? That's the question. For me, a good deal means you're buying at 80% of all-in value. So meaning if the property is going to be worth, let's say, $500,000 when it's all said and done, all right? And I know that it needs $50,000 of renovations. What I'm going to do is take 80% of 500K. So in this case, that's 400,000, right? And then I'm going to minus 50K of renovation cost. So the max I am willing to pay for this deal is $350,000. So to me, that would be a good deal, and that would qualify as a BRRRR. Because I bought it correctly, now I renovated it for the 50K, now I've rented it out, I know it's going to at least break even or cash flow, and then I'm going to go refinance it. Now the cool thing is when you refinance, they'll typically give you 80% of loan to value ratio, and if you did all the numbers right, you're going to be all into this deal for 400K, they give you a loan for 400K, now you own the home with no money out of pocket, and you do the last step, which is to simply repeat. Now, if you're going to do a BRRRR, there's a lot that goes into it, people. You first off have to have, usually if you're going to get a conventional loan, 2 years tax returns. You need good credit. You need, all these different things, right? You got to be able to support the loan. So this is not a creative deal, which we'll talk about, but I bought many houses with BRRRR. If you're a W-2 employee, this could be a reason why you should keep your W-2 job just to do the BRRRR method, because you have steady tax returns. So we've had a lot of students over the years who keep their job just simply so they can do more BRRRRs. So I love the BRRRR strategy from that point of view. There is a creative type loan called the DSCR loan. Now, they all vary. Some do care about your tax returns, some don't. They all care about, obviously, the value of the property, but they're not going to be so concerned about your debt to income ratio like a traditional BRRRR would. They're more so concerned about the rental property. And so what DSCR stands for is debt service coverage ratio. They essentially want to make sure that your rent will cover all of the debt. So if the debt is, in this case, let's say the debt equals the mortgage, just so you know. Let's just say that that's $2,000, right? I mean, they're going to want to see a certain ratio. Let's say that the ratio is 1.2. That would mean that they want to see that you're bringing in 1.2x times the rent. And so in this case, if it's 2,000, they're going to want to see a 2,400 rent for you to get this loan approved, because they want to just make sure that you're going to be good to make those payments and the rent's going to cover it. So this number varies with loan to loan. So this is just the example of it, right? But all in all, these are different ways that you can do financing. Now, some of you guys are like, well, Ryan, what about creative? Well, let's talk about creative, because I'm going to need a whole nother page to explain this, right? Creative finance is a whole niche in itself. And, I want to give you some basic things because I don't want to confuse you on all the ways you could go. Subject 2. The easiest way to explain what this is basically just taking over their loan. So let's say a person owes $300,000 on the property, and, it could be worth whatever it's worth. It doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, I don't have to pay off their loan to buy the property. I could buy the property while keeping their loan in place. Most people don't realize this. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically saying, hey, I'm buying the property subject to the existing loan staying in place. Okay? So I won't buy it if the loan doesn't stay there. I will buy it if it does. And so the seller agrees to this. Now, why would you do it? Why would the seller do it? Well, on a subject to deal, there's lots of reasons why either of us might do this deal. For one, let's say the seller has a 3% loan, right? Man, a lot of us salivating, sitting around pissed we didn't buy more properties with the 3% interest rates, right? It is what it is, but guess what? You can still buy the 3% interest rates buying people's properties subject to. So that's the benefit for us as a buyer, getting a great interest rate and a great payment. For the seller, you're like, well, why would the seller sell it? Well, in many cases with a subject to, there's multiple reasons why they might do it. For one, they might get more money. Let's just, for example, say the property's worth $300,000 and, I'm coming there and I'm like, bro, I'd pay $320 if you let me keep that loan in place, because I'm going to save a lot of money in the long run by having the loan. So seller's like, all right, I'll make an extra 20 grand by keeping, you can keep the loan, I don't care. So they might make more money, right? It could also be the only way for them to sell. So to give an example, let's say they owe $300K and it's worth $300K, right? Just using a different scenario. Well, they're still going to have all their fees and commissions. Realtors are going to cost 6%. Title and escrow is going to be at 2%. And, when it's all said and done, they got basically $25K in fees. So right now, if they were to sell their property, they basically have to come out of pocket $25,000 to sell it. So there's many sellers who are like, bro, I can't come out of pocket 25 grand. Well, that's where a guy like me comes in and says, hey, look, I'll buy it for $300K. We don't need to pay any of these things. Just keep the loan in place. I'll buy it for $300K right now. And a seller's like, well, I'd rather keep the loan in place and not pay $25K, so I'll sell it to you for that. That's why a seller would do it in this case. I've also had sellers who were in pre-foreclosure who couldn't make their payments, and so, we basically caught the payments up, and so they didn't care about their credit anyway because it was already going to crap. So we've bought many properties subject to because of pre-foreclosure and other things. So subject to is a great way to buy real estate. There's also cons for the seller, right? The seller, their loan is still there, so they are still on the hook if the new buyer stops paying. So that's a big issue. Another big issue is what we call the due on sale clause. The due on sale clause basically says that, hey, the moment the property sells, the loan is due, meaning it must be paid. Now, look, they all say that. Very few actually enforce it, but that's a risk. So, just understand that that is there. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is seller finance. So seller finance, to me, this could be done in multiple ways, but the simplest term of this is that you own the property free and clear as the seller, and you have a choice, right? I come to you and I'm like, yo, your property's worth $300K. I want to offer you $220, right? Me as the guy trying to get a good deal. Seller's like, no, right? I want $300K. And I'm like, well, would you sell it for $300K for terms? Terms would be, that I'm now saying, well, how about you become the bank? Because I'm not going to pay market value for this property and go get a loan and put freaking 20% down and all that stuff. By the way, if you saw from the previous financing part, I do not believe in just buying a property and just putting 20% down and like paying market value. That is what bad investors do. Please do not do that. Get good deals and like that. Don't pay market value and put 20% down and just do that thing. I'm just not a fan of that. But anyways, back to this seller finance. So let's say the seller's like, yo, Ryan, $300K. That's what I want. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you $300K, but you own it free and clear, right? And they're like, yeah. Well, okay, so what are you going to do with the money the moment I give you $300K? And they're like, I wasn't going to do anything. And I'm like, well, what if, I got to go get a loan on this anyway. What if I paid you interest on that money and you just became the bank? And they're like, that would be interesting. What would it look like? And so then I would proceed to discuss multiple things with them. So the different things to talk about with a seller finance deal are price, your rate. I would say your term, like basically how long is it, the loan term. And, those are really like the big keys to the deal at the end of the day. There are other things too, like amortization and stuff, but we won't get into that. Long story short, we already know they want $300K. I'm like, okay, so it's $300K. Oh yeah, then the other part would be the down payment. So, how much money do you want down? In my mind, ideally it'd be zero, right? That'd be best case for me. But maybe they're like, 10K would be good. So I'm like, okay, I'll give you 10K down. And then we talk about interest rate, right? Well, best case scenario for me, interest rate would be zero, right? Now, that means everything would go to principal. But let's say they're like, 5% is good. And I'm like, all right, great. And then there's the term. So the term would be, okay, well, how long are we going to do this deal for? And the term could be, let's just say, best case, really long. So let's just say like it's a 30-year deal, right? So they're basically structuring it like a normal bank loan. Or maybe they say, the term is only going to be like 5 years. I actually just had a deal that the 5 years is now finishing. It was like kind of almost close to this deal. He gave me 5% interest rate, 5 years. And now we have basically a balloon payment because I didn't clearly pay it all off in 5 years. And so now I have a decision to make. I can sell the property, I can refinance, or I can go back to the seller and try to get an extension, right? So we're in the process of figuring out what we want to do. But long story short, the term is the years. And then, if you do that, then you basically just got to understand, hey, what's my balloon payment, at the end of this once it all plays out. So there's lots of ways to structure this deal. If it was me, personally, I'm always going for as little down as possible. And then I want 0% interest. And so like what I would try to do with this guy is I'd be like, hey, what if I gave you even more than it's worth? And they're like, all right, what would that look like? And, I might say, what if I paid you, let's say I paid you $330,000, like way more than it's worth. But in return, I want 0% interest. And, at that point, I can just basically set a payment amount. So I could just say, and, at that, I'm going to pay you, let's just say, $1,300 a month. That just all goes towards principal pay down. Okay. And then, you're going to give me 15 years at this $1,300 a month, and I'm going to give you 10 grand down, right? For me, that'd be a sweet deal because, in the next 15 years at 0% interest, I'm going to kill it. Like, I'm going to have paid this thing down. Like, if it's $1,300 a month, that's close to 15K a year, just simple math. And, 15K times 15K. Why did I use such hard numbers, guys? I think that comes out to 225, right? So in 15 years, I'm going to have paid off, basically 2/3 of this. And it was all no interest. And, maybe the rent also was paying off, let's say the rent was $1,700. So I was cash flowing a little bit. And, in year 5, the rent jumped to like $2,200. In year 15, the rent's, $3,000. And so, I'm really cash flowing as the years keep going on. So this is why seller finance can be a really powerful tool, because at the end of the day, you can negotiate whatever you want. And so if you're going to hold this thing long term, that rate and that payment are probably more important than the price. But most sellers are like very fixated on the price, so you can definitely make something happen. I actually did a deal like this where I bought 3 properties, and at the time they were worth like $800K, and I ended up paying $900K for the 3 properties. But the reason I did it was they gave me a sick deal. They gave me 0% interest, 15 years. I only paid $15K down on that deal, and I forgot what the payment was, but long story short, it was going to cash flow. It's here in Vegas. Yeah, I overpaid by $100K, but overall it was a great deal. And guess what? I didn't even keep the deal. You know what I did? I wholesaled it for $90K. It was one of my biggest wholesales ever at that time, but I wholesaled it for $90K because somebody else looked at my terms and they were like, dude, I'll pay $1 million to get 0% interest for the next 15 years on this 3-pack of properties. Because if you just think about it, right? Just do the math. Let's say that the payment was $5K a month, right? $5K times 12 months, that's $60K a year. You do that for 15 years. That's going to pay off $900K in 15 years. Well, I'm paying $900K for the property, and yeah, they paid me $90K more, so they paid $990, right? But basically, the property's paid off in 15 years versus that property would have been, most people would have got a 30-year loan. They would have actually paid way more with the interest than, the extra $200K that this person ended up paying. So, like, they actually got a really good deal because the terms were really good. So the way you win with real estate in general is you're either just going to get a great price on it, or you're going to get great terms, or you have a really smart exit strategy. And so, I'm not going to talk about that, but like an example would be with a smart exit strategy, maybe rezoning the property, maybe entitling it and other things. Like, there's other smart ways you could pay market value, but because your exit is so strong, you can make a lot of money. So long story short, that is the basics of creative financing for getting a property with little to no money. And side note with that, a few years ago, I did a video, I'll link to it after this, where I bought a 10-unit apartment building here in Vegas for literally $300,000 seller finance. I put $15,000 down. I got no payments for 3 years, okay? Like, literally, I'll link to it down on the YouTube. It was crazy. And, long story short, I cash flowed it for years. It was great. And I sold it for around, I want to say like 1.2 million after a few years. So that was a sick deal. But that being said, let's now talk about rental strategy. All right. So let's talk about the different ways to make money while you're renting it. So I mentioned before, but the most simple way is just long-term. Here's my advice when it comes to long-term rentals. Get properties or get property management. Like, I just use a property manager for everything. It's not worth you chasing down tenants, trying to find them, vet them. Go figure out how to go make more money. All right. Don't waste your time with property management. I'm going to leave it there. All right. So long-term though, is just going to be like, yeah, you're getting a 12-month tenant. I'm not even going to tell you how to vet tenants, because just use a property manager. Super easy. The next way would be Midterm. So in many markets like Las Vegas, we are not allowed to do short-term rentals, meaning daily rentals. They must be 30 days or more. And so Vegas is weird because, man, Vegas would crush it if Airbnb was legal for, daily, but it's not because the casinos don't want you to. So we got to do 30 days or more. And look, you are certainly going to make more money doing this than long-term. But, the question is, how much more? And is it worth the headache, right? If a long-term rental might make $3,000 and they're locked in for a year, your 30-day, let's just say it makes $5,000, that's great. But you still got to pay cleaners and all these other things when they leave. So I don't know, let's say it's $500. Then you get more wear and tear because you now are responsible for the furniture. So I don't know, maybe you allocate another $500 to that. And then you also have vacancy. You're not going to consistently be rented all the time. So that might end up costing you $1,000 a month. So now you really look at it and you're like, dang, we're back to $3,000. That's not even counting the property management fee for this. So if you're going to do a midterm, you got to make sure the numbers pencil out. So, in this case, you're like, oh, that didn't even pencil out. But, if the midterm rental would have made, say, $7,000, you're like, oh, okay. Even with the property management fee and the other things that are going to happen, it definitely is worth doing. I'm going to make some cash flow. So midterm's great on that front. And then, you have short term. So short term would be anything less than 30 days, your daily rentals, your 2-day rentals and stuff. And so, dude, I've been doing Airbnb since 2017. So I was doing it way before it was this big thing people wanted to do. I bought my first Airbnb in Big Bear, California. Okay. It was $200,000 in 2017. And I bought it. My mortgage was like $1,300 a month. And the Airbnb rent, like I was just doing the pro forma before there was all these tools and things. And I was like, dude, I think this thing's going to make like $4,000 a month. Sure enough, I rented it and it was making $4,000 a month on a $1,300 mortgage. So I was like, this is crazy. So then that led me to buying more and more properties in Big Bear. And then, they put a hit on me in the city and they're like, changed the laws and said you could only own one and, all this crap, right? Which was really stupid because Airbnb and stuff brought the city its, revenue and helped it grow. But whatever, that's life. So if you can't tell, I'm a little salty about it. But anyways, I stopped buying them after that. I ended up buying like 10 of them and they made me millions of dollars, guys. Like that first property, not only did it make a ton of money in cash flow, but I recently sold it. And, a few years after the fact of buying it for $200,000, we sold it for like $450. So clearly it was a good deal. My second one I bought it for $230 and it's currently listed for $600,000. So, at the end of the day, short-term rentals are good. And the only reason I'm selling them is because, I just think that, the market's kind of like gonna slow down because people can't buy a bunch of them anymore. And, it's all good. I'll just trade out and I'll go invest in another market. I made a lot of money in that market, so I don't need to keep staying there. And that's actually a big thing I want to tell you guys when it comes to rentals. Most of you are thinking that, I'm going to buy this rental and I'm going to own it the rest of my life. And it's like, no, that's actually unlikely to happen. Even if you look at the biggest investors in the world, they're always trading in and out of assets, right? Back to the hedge funds. Most funds are 5 to 10 years. By default, they must sell the assets in the fund within the next 5 to 10 years. So these are the people who have billions of dollars of real estate, and they do not keep the same assets. They are always trading in and out. And I've just seen that from all of my wealthy friends. Like, they do the same thing. They're always trading into the next opportunity. Because, like, for example, this Big Bear property, let's just take it, it's worth $600,000. Like, I have a choice. Do I want to just keep the equity in there and it's worth $600,000? Do I think the next 5 years it's going to go to 1.2 million or double? Maybe it could, but are there other markets that I could use all that equity in that I think are going to be better bets long term? And the answer is yes. There are other things I think will be a better bet in the next 5 years. So in that case, it's better for me to sell and redeploy. And we can do other things too, which I'm going to talk about now with taxes. So taxes are one of those things that lead you to, the really fun parts of real estate. But, to finish the thought on which one you should do, what I'll say is if you're going to choose short term, or midterm or long-term, just make sure you understand the laws in your market. Do not do a short-term rental in Las Vegas where it's illegal. You will get shut down. It's just not worth it, okay? And then run your numbers. If the midterm makes sense, do a midterm, right? If you can do a short-term rental, go do it the right way, get your licenses, do all the things the city requires, go make your money. So it's all good. Also, by the way, for those of you who want to learn about buying rentals and you want to learn how to find deals and all this, we have a coaching program called Wealthy Investor. We've trained thousands of students. You guys can go to wealthyinvestor.com and go apply and book a call with our team today, and we'll help you out, all right? So next thing, taxes. So one of the ways that you can trade is called a 1031 exchange, all right? So, that property I was just telling you about in Big Bear, I'm gonna have a big tax bill on it because it's got like a $300,000 gain. So I got a choice. I can just pay taxes. In this case, it's probably gonna be like 20% because it's long-term capital gains. Or I can 1031 it and put that money into another deal. And so, in most cases, I might 1031. There are a lot of complexities with it, but that's what a lot of investors do. They just keep selling the properties and trading up into a new property. This is why I say it's very unlikely that you're going to just keep holding this property for the long haul. You're most likely going to trade up or invest in something else. So 1031 is a great part of the tax code. Another thing, this is the main reason why people buy rental properties, and that is for depreciation. So depreciation is a really cool tool in the tax code, which basically gives you basically a paper loss. And so to sum it up, you can write off the building cost over 27 and a half years. I don't think it's changed, but basically over 27 and a half years, you can write off the cost of the building. So let's just say, easy numbers, the property's worth $300K. They say the land is worth $100, so the building, to make numbers easy, let's say the land is worth $25K, and so the building is worth $275K, right? Well, you would divide that by 27 and a half years, right? You see why I changed the number. And that means you can basically write off $10,000 per year on this rental property. So that's pretty cool. You can just literally write off that money. And it's not like it even happened. They're basically just saying, yeah, over 27 and a half years, you're going to basically have to change everything. And so we'll give you credit for that every single year, knowing you're going to have to fix that stuff up. Well, you could take it a step further and do what's called a cost segregation. And a cost segregation study is really cool because it takes that building value, this $275K, and it basically says, yo, you can actually depreciate certain items in year one, all of it, right? And so I'm not going to get into what those things are, but what I can say is, on average, you could probably get 30% of the building value written off. So if I was to take, just for easy math, this $300K and say, hey, 30% we'll be able to be getting so just for simple math, if I take this $300K and I take 30% of it, basically I'm saying I can get a $90,000 write-off in year one through a cost segregation study, and that can go against my income. And if you're a real estate professional, it can go against your active income, which is really crazy. If you're not, then it goes against your passive income, which would be rental income and other things, right? So cost segregations are great because, for a guy like me, let's just say, I made $90,000. We'll just use the number as an example. Let's say I made $90,000. If I get a $90,000 write-off through a cost segregation study, I'm literally going to pay $0 in taxes. So they're really cool. And this is what all the wealthy are doing. They're doing 1031s. They're doing depreciation. They're doing cost segregations. That's why they're buying rental properties. Now, clearly, buying rental properties is great because, you get the appreciation like we were talking about. You can create cash flow through the different rental strategies we talked about. You also get these tax benefits that we're talking about. And then your tenant does pay down your principal balance, like we were talking about too. Eventually, you're not going to owe anything if you own it long enough. And so for me, building wealth through rental properties is an amazing tool. I own many rental properties today, like I said, whether they be Airbnbs or single families or with investors in my fund. And, you know, it's what does lead to wealth. And so for me, my goal is that I want to make great active income through flipping, wholesaling, you know, my education company, my other businesses, through social media. Like, I'm going to take all that active income and then I'm going to reinvest it into rental properties so that I can build my long-term wealth, but then get all these tax breaks to offset the active income that I am making in my business. And so that is the key to becoming wealthy, guys. That's what all of them are doing in real estate. And whether you're trying to scale or buy your first rental property, you can start doing it today too. And like I said, we would love to help you out at Wealthy Investor. If that's something you want to do, let us know. If not, make sure you subscribe, keep watching the videos, and we'll see you on the next one.